Snap Judgment Studios. Get a behind-the-scenes look at Comedy Central's The Daily Show on Beyond the Scenes, an original podcast from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Every week, host Roy Wood Jr. goes deeper with notable guests and experts from the Emmy Award-winning series, and together they use comedy to tackle current topics, from gentrification to gun laws, and take a closer look at how and why these topics matter. Listen to Beyond the Scenes from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes every Tuesday. Attention shoppers, we now have taste in the bread aisle. Dave's Killer Bread, that's right. An organic bread that's no longer a sedative for your taste buds. Dave's Killer Bread is on a mission to make the most of the loaf, to rid the world of GMOs, high fructose corn syrup, and artificial ingredients, and plant the seeds of good in all that they bake. Killer taste, killer texture, always organic. Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified. This week on Snap, we get to feature a collaboration with producer Briana Breen from the Lucky Podcast. And Briana brings us a story of one of Yugoslavia's top basketball players.
Since I was 13 years old, I was this tall, 6'3", and fell in love with the game of basketball. I played first division in Yugoslavia. That's like WNBA here in America.
Her name is Nana Rothbart, and in her country, she's widely regarded as one of the best players to step on the court.
Coaches said that I was one of the most talented players the country ever had. I loved it so much I never wanted to leave. I played all the way until I found out that I was pregnant. And I remember that day we were warming up and I just couldn't feel right. It felt like somebody's pulling my legs down. I couldn't jump, and then that week I found out I was pregnant. So I didn't play, of course. I didn't play after that.
Nada's story takes place in 1992, about 5 years after she left the league and opened her own law office. Now married and a mother of two, she's focused on building a future with her family. But what Nada doesn't know is that the country she calls home is on the brink of collapse.
My husband and I, my two little kids, 4.5 years old and 5.5 years old, we lived with my in-laws. We were sitting at the dinner table and we started hearing unusual noises outside of the window. I looked through the window. It was unbelievable amount of people walking from one side of the town towards downtown, hundreds of people yelling. It was scary. And suddenly I heard a gunshot in front of our balcony. It was a sound I've never heard before. My husband went through the door immediately to see what's going on. And later on TV, we heard that was a first victim of war. I just said that was a sound I've never heard before, and I just realized it's not true. Several months before war started, we would go to concerts on the top of the hill in Sarajevo. And my husband and I and my best friend Aida, we are going up to catch a concert, and we hear gunshots, maybe a street or two down. And we stopped. I don't remember who said, "Oh, it's not in our street." So these things were happening slowly, gradually, to the point that you're able to say, "Oh, this is not in my street. I'm going to the concert." That night, my husband said, "I don't think we will have war in Bosnia because the nationalities are so equal that nobody can win this war." At that time, Bosnia had three major nationalities: Serbs, Croats, and Muslims. Among all our friends, there was always Serbs, Muslims, Croats, and I'm Jewish. We had neighbors with all nationalities and religions. We were all friends. We celebrated everybody's holidays. My in-laws were Serbs, and I learned how to celebrate their Christmas. We felt nothing will ever divide us. First 10 days maybe, we had a somewhat normal life. Shooting was only during the night, and during the day, we were going to work. Kids were going out to play. My father called from Serbia saying, "Pack your bags and run." I said, "Oh, don't worry, Dad. They're just shooting over our buildings. They're not shooting at us." And he, being the only Holocaust survivor in his family, was terrified. He said to me, "Nada, if you have any chance, pick up your kids and leave." I remember saying, "They will stop in a day or two. Everybody's saying they will stop, and I want to keep working in my office." He said to me, "Nada, 6 million Jews died because they were holding on their offices, their stores, their lives, their houses, because they didn't know that something like this can happen. Who could know that? Who could predict something like this? But your entire family died in Auschwitz, so you know you don't repeat the same mistake." It took me at least 20 days to figure out that it's actually a war. In some level, I thought, maybe somebody is shooting a movie about the war in my neighborhood. And I remember thinking, that's pretty crazy thought. You know better. It's very hard to accept that your entire life is gone. Everything you ever worked for, learned, studied, accomplished, planned, it's absolutely gone. I went to work until one day I was all dressed up and ready to go, and I remember grabbing the door handle. The biggest bomb exploded, and it was in the middle of the day. And I remember stopping and saying, "Well, they will be okay if I miss one day." And from that day, I wasn't going to work at all. Sarajevo was divided by the river Miljacka. Miljacka was a beautiful river that had bridges to connect us. When war started, Miljacka divided the town in two. And I have never known before war that I lived in so-called Serbian part. So now I'm living in a Serbian side of the town. Mountains that are on my side are filled with Serbian tanks and soldiers. They're shooting across the river to the Muslim side of the town. Muslim side of the mountains are filled with their soldiers and tanks, and they're shooting across the river. And one of the first victims was a little 2 years old that was sleeping in a crib. She was a Muslim little girl living in a Serbian side of the town, so Muslims killed her, hoping to kill somebody who is a Serb. It's just a representation of absolute nonsense of what happened and how these wars are absolute tragedy. The Serbs put an announcement: if you are a male from this age to this age, maybe 16 to 68, something like that, you need to report to join the army. As soon as my husband saw this, he came home, gave me 5,000 Deutschmarks in cash. That was a huge amount of money for Yugoslavia at that time. And he says, "I'm not going to join the army, I'm leaving." He didn't kiss the kids, he didn't hug and kiss me, he just left. I can just guess that it was too hard to say goodbye. I remember closing the door and saying, now it's up to me. I have two old parents here. I have two little kids here, and I need to keep this together. If I can remember correctly, it's maybe few days, just few days. Things started getting worse and worse and worse. Serbs surrounded every building and came with tanks and heavy ammunition. Some soldiers were holding these rockets on their shoulders, and when they shoot somewhere, that produces an amazing sound, and the whole building would shake many, many times. From the shaking, the building material would get all over the house in our hair and skin. Very quickly figured out that the safest thing to do is to cover all the windows and place the shelves with books and all the cushiony stuff from the sofas, mattresses, because the bullets and pieces of the bomb would be stuck in the fabric of the mattress and the layers of the books. Every time when we hear sirens, we would go down in basement and stay there until we feel we are safe to come up. Of course, if the bomb explodes on top of our building, we would be all underneath. There was absolutely no safe place for us. The only thing we had as far as food is 100 kilos of sauerkraut, and we have probably a case of oil. Every single day, I cut sour cabbage and put a little olive oil as a salad and a little red paprika. Try eating this every day with absolutely nothing else. It's healthy, it's probiotic, but there's absolutely nothing in your stomach. One particular day, I experienced a horrible banging on the door. I opened the door and I see 17 guys in front of me. I counted them all. The first guy standing in front of me is taller than me with a line of bullets across his shoulders and machine guns. Start assessing the situation, and the guy says, "What's your name?" So I said, "Nada Rothbart." "What's Rothbart? What last name is this?" I said, "It's mine." He wants to know, am I Serbian? He wants to know, is he going to kill me or not? What is he going to do?
You're listening to Snap Judgment, the lucky episode. In just a moment, find out what Nada decides when her decision means everything. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Snap Judgment, the lucky episode. When last we left Nada, she's standing in her doorway, facing down two soldiers, each armed to the teeth. One of the soldiers has a question.
He wants to know, am I Serbian? He wants to know, is he going to kill me or not? What is he going to do? And I just found the kindest and the warmest voice. And I said, "Listen, gentlemen, we don't have anything here for you." He asked me immediately, "Where's your husband?" I said, "He's gone." So I opened the doors wide open. So I'm not hiding anything. And I said, "We have here my in-laws. They're old and sick in the bedroom. I have two little kids and me. There's nothing here really." And I just stood there and looked straight into his eyes. I gave him respect, and I stood my ground. Several long seconds of silence. He says, "Okay, let's go, guys." And they turned around and left. Later, I heard that they got into every apartment. They beat people up. They came to steal anything of value. One of the nights, being in a basement, my neighbor, who was at that time 60, really broke down, almost like a nervous breakdown, yelling at me, "How dare you keep your kids here? Everybody left with the small kids and you stayed here with your little kids. I don't know why you're still here." But at that time, I didn't have any way out. There was no way out. I had the deepest pain in the bottom of my stomach, really knowing that I kept my two precious sons in that situation, and I could have left earlier. And I am responsible for their life or possibly death. It was tearing me apart. I was convinced we're all going to be dead here. One morning, it was quiet, unusually quiet, and I opened the drawer in the living room, and I found a transistor radio. I didn't know I owned one, and I listened to the news. There was going to be a 5-day ceasefire starting that day. From the experience, the ceasefire would happen, except for it would last 20 minutes, and then somebody would shoot, and then war starts again. I said, let's go. Put my feet into the first shoes I found. I knew instinctively this is the place I will never come back again. So we walked out. My mother-in-law walked with us maybe for 2 minutes, and she just said, well, I will say goodbye. Her husband had a stroke for 10 years, and he was in bed. She was not going to leave him, so we just briefly gave each other a hug. I didn't turn around to see her. There was no looking back. This is Yugoslavia as my hand. In the middle of the hand is Sarajevo. On the right side, more towards the north, is Serbia, Novi Sad. We were going towards that direction, going to my hometown, when I saw a new formed barricade and around 50 to 60 women and kids. Kids crying and women yelling, I want to go. And so everybody heard on the radio there will be ceasefire and they're trying to go. So the army is stopping us and saying, who are you and where are you going? We are standing in the back of that line when suddenly one of the soldiers that appeared to be the main guy in that barricade said, hey, Nada, come here. Didn't know is it good or bad. And I started walking to the front of the line, and I come close to him and I recognize him. He's one of these faithful fans from my basketball years that meet you in a bus or on the street and says, oh, I've watched your game last night. You played really well. And I would always politely thank him and stop and talk to him. Suddenly, he's in a uniform and my life depends on what he's going to decide. We say, oh, I'm going to help you. Hey, buddy, come on over. Help this woman and these kids go to, where do you want to go? The first place I had in mind to go was Pale, a little village, Pale. If I made it there, there was no bombing there. It's on the top of the hill where actually Serbian authorities and a president were located at that time. So if I make it there, I could hope to survive. So now this guy shows up with a car, beat-up car full of ammunition, bombs, everything. He looks like bad news. But he was asked to help us. Kids started to cry immediately. And I said, hey, don't worry about anything. This is a really good man. He's going to help us. And I made a crucial mistake. I gave him $100 worth of money to motivate him to help us. He took the money, which was at that time a yearly salary in Yugoslavia. He took the money, drove us literally around the corner of that building, opened the door, and cast us out. Get out of here, you piece of ... And we just got out. I said, no problems, no problem. Thank you so much. Thank you. My kids are screaming and crying. And I hugged them and kissed them and kneeled down. I said, everything will be okay. We'll be fine. So we kept going, walking, and suddenly there was a field full of women, refugees, old women and women with kids, and unbelievable amount of army trucks. Every truck was full. And I thought, I'm the luckiest person if I can get the permission to go in the back of the truck with my kids to get out of Sarajevo. And I asked the driver, I said, is this okay if my kids and I go up there? He looked at me and my beautiful kids and says, no, ma'am, I will find something better for you. He walked me around and found me another truck. And I walked in the back of the truck, who was 2/3 of the truck were ammunition and food. And there was 6 soldiers. I put Robert, the older son, on the farther side, the younger son in my lap, hugging both of them so they have no contact with any soldiers. And we started our journey. I thought, this is it. These people are going to drive us and we're going to be safe. After around 15 minutes, interrogation started. They started asking my kids questions. What are your names? What is your religious holiday? So I'm Jewish and I never taught them any of our holidays. I grew up playing basketball and not too much in a religious world. They knew I was Jewish, but that was not on the top of their head. We celebrated their father's Serbian holidays. And they started telling them the right answers because they were Serbian soldiers. We celebrate Christmas, we celebrate this, we celebrate that. They said, what is your grandma's name? What is your grandfather's name? They just went through all the questions, and I knew for sure that if we were Croats or Muslims, they would kill us, and that would be the end of it. So one of the last questions is, what's your father's name? My father's name is Zoran Kajmakovic. And the soldier next to me says, oh, I know him. He's the best friend of my neighbor. He's a really good guy. I said, yes, he is. And from that moment, the energy relaxes. We arrived to Pale. It's a little village. I've never been at that village. And they said, ma'am, where do you want me to drop you off? I said, I have no idea. And they dropped me off in front of the police station. And they left. I looked around like a slow motion camera, 360 several times. And I saw like 2 football fields far away. A man, half an inch tall, going away. Kind of something familiar. And I realized, oh my God, my husband has a cousin here, and I knew his name. His name was Misho. But how likely is that I see one guy in Pale and that's his cousin? I decided this must be Misho, and I started screaming his name 10, 15, 20 times, screaming. My yelling turned into a real screaming with tears, because if I stop, I have no other idea what to do. After maybe 20 times, the person turned around, started running towards me. And when he was close enough, he says, Nada, is it you? He took me to his home. Clean house, hot shower, wonderful dinner that I couldn't eat. My kids ate the dinner, Wiener Schnitzel and chicken soup and all these wonderful things. I couldn't believe that we used to eat this kind of food. But Pale never had war, even though it's so close to Sarajevo. We went outside for a little bit to walk with kids in a little park that was very close. We let them swing in the swings. It was so surreal to me. The silence and my kids happy in the swings. We came home. She made some crepes with chocolate. The boys were loving it. They were just, oh my goodness, all chocolate was around their faces and they were so happy. So in my mind, I felt we made it, but I didn't say anything. I thought at that point that we saved our lives. I didn't know the war is happening all over Bosnia. I thought it's only in Sarajevo. And in my journey, I had to go further through the land of Bosnia to get to Serbia. Misha bought bus tickets for next day for 7 a.m. for us to go from Pale to Belgrade, capital of Serbia. I did manage to call my father from Pale and said we are getting into that bus. In the bus, there was only women and kids below the age of being recruited for the army. And we started our journey. That's usually 5 hours driving distance. I remember seeing villages bombed, whole village emptied. I saw killed big animals like cows and horses on the edge of the road. Throughout that journey, we were stopped by at least 13 very unusual group of men. Several of them had some kind of army uniform, some of them didn't. They would come in and ID every single one of us, and then they would leave. It would repeat over and over again. There was a grandma in front of me on the other side of the bus that was hiding a young teenager who would be in that age bracket to join the army. And every time somebody stopped the bus and these weird characters walked in, he would go underneath the seat and she would cover him with a blanket. And I have a feeling it was for a reason that he was right there where I was sitting. I would start talking to the guy and kind of distract him to take him away from this boy. I never talked to the grandma. I never talked to this boy. Bus was absolutely full of passengers. Nobody exchanged one word with each other. Several hours later, the bus stopped again, and there was a new border in between Bosnia and Serbia. There was no border in between our republics before. So a little man-made kiosk and a soldier. He says, you need to turn around, go back to Sarajevo because Serbia is not accepting refugees anymore. As soon as I heard that, I took my kids and I walked outside, and the soldier said, what are you doing, ma'am? I said, I'm not a refugee. I am from Novi Sad. I'm going home. I'm not a refugee. And they both said, ma'am, go back to the bus. So it's war, so you don't. I mean, I tried. I tried not to go back to Sarajevo, wouldn't you? Go back to hell? I would rather walk for days than go back to get killed. "5 hours sitting in the bus and waiting. I hear the driver turn on the engine and we left. I don't know why and who decided to let us go. So approaching to Belgrade, my father, he was waiting for probably 6 hours. We arrived and I saw him through the window. He saw me and he collapsed on the floor. And I picked up my kids and walked outside. I said, "Dad, why are you crying? I'm here. I was safe." He says, when the bus was late for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I went to the information window and I said, "When is that bus coming from Pale that left at 7 a.m.? He says, "I don't know." So what do you mean I don't know? He said, "Well, the previous bus never arrived." What do you mean the previous bus never arrived? How come buses don't arrive? Where are they? He says, "Well, the groups of criminals in these mountains stopped the bus. The criminals knew if you're leaving your whole life and you can't carry anything, you can carry a little cash and a little jewelry. So they killed everybody in the bus to steal little valuables." When my father heard that, he is the only person surviving Holocaust, and his entire family, including his 9-year-old sister, died in Auschwitz. He just couldn't handle this. He decided to stay there until I arrive. Even now, I think about that. What did I do to deserve to be on that other bus? How lucky I was. I think about this often. We drove from Belgrade to Novi Sad. It's an hour and 15 minutes. Very soon we went to shower and to bed. My mom's and dad's apartment is very small, and we slept on the floor using the cushions from the sofa, and we would hug each other very close. And I noticed Ivan would climb underneath me in the middle of the night to feel safe. I wasn't able to sleep. I go out to go for a walk, and my dad said, "Why are you going in the middle of the night? It's not safe." Of course it's safe. Nobody is shooting and bombing me. So of course I can go to walk and smell the air and be outside and listen how silence feels.
Nada's husband made it out of Sarajevo safe and sound. He reunited with his family after 100 days apart on a train station platform in Budapest. That story came to us from producer Briana Breen in the podcast Lucky. And you'll want to check out the Lucky podcast to listen to part 2 of Nada's incredible story. Find out what happened next. There'll be a link on our website, snapjudgment.org. You can also see pictures of Nada's life before the war at snapjudgment.org. Music in this episode is from Blue Dot Sessions, produced with help from Natasha Ruck and Tony Gannon. Special thanks as well to David Newsom, Tom Worth, Robert Rothbart, and Nada Rothbart. Now, Glenn, that was an amazing show. I wonder where we could find more incredible Snap Judgment programming. Friends, have I got news for you. Stunning Snap Judgment episodes, including The Badlands, Fargo, Inside San Quentin with Ear Hustle, and the Senior Year Mixtape, where we follow behind a group of high school seniors for a full year and what we discover. Lord have mercy. All of this and more on the Snap Judgment podcast for free. Binge. If you dig it, leave a review of Snap Judgment on the iTunes. If you don't dig it, please leave a review for This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Snap is produced by the team that always gets lucky, if you know what I mean. Everyone except for the Uber producer, Mr. Mark Ristich. Smooth talking Pat Mesiti-Miller. Anna Campbell T. Sussman. Nancy, Massage Lotion Lopez, Renzo Cinnamon Cloves Gorio, Satin Shayna Sheely, Liz Burlap Mac, Eliza Cotton Smith, Teo Wild Honey Ducot, Adiza Bird Songs Mixtape Egan, Leon Whipped Cream Morimoto, and Jasmine Aguilera likes ice with her cream. And even though this is not the news, no way it's just the news. In fact, you would hit every lottery number the announcer calls out for the big prize, only to realize you're looking at last week's ticket. And you would still not be as far away from the news as this is. But this is PRX.